Online mental health care. For anybody out there that is remote or is having trouble engaging with a traditional service, we're about to find out all about it from Mindspot. It's coming up in uno, dos, tres. It was my absolute pleasure last week to chat to the executive director of an incredible organisation called Mindspot. His name was Professor Nick Titov. Now, of course, whenever you get to speak to a professor or a doctor or a Your Highness, you don't know how they're going to be. But I found Nick to be extremely personable and approachable and open. And through no fault of his own, we've had a bit of a catastrophic equipment failure. So I was able to save some of the audio from the conversation, but I want you to know that I am inviting Professor Nick to come back on air and speak to us via video chat. He may have got the message already. He may not have. But what we talked about was so insightful and so important and so revolutionary to me that I wanted to bring it to you in some way, shape or form. And I hope you enjoy my creative efforts. So I began by asking why they do what they do. Here's what he had to say.
The main reason is really to be able to improve access to people to mental health care and good mental health care as well. We know that many people struggle to access regular face-to-face services. It might be because some people have such severe symptoms that getting out of the house is too difficult. For other people, there are no local services where they live, or they choose not to use those services for different reasons. And for other people, they can't actually access traditional services, which may only be open during business hours.
Yeah.
And then, of course, for some people, they just prefer the extra anonymity of talking to someone online or using the service online rather than having to see people face to face.
Knowing the why was one thing, but what I really wanted to know is, can online therapy replace face-to-face? You would assume that people need that face-to-face connection, that ability to look at somebody in the eye in person. They can't hide anything. So we assume that face-to-face has to be better than online, over the phone, by a letter.
Yeah, we have. And we've also looked really carefully at the reality of those assumptions.
Mm-hmm.
And what we've learned over the years is that it is important to understand who someone is, where they've come from, what the issues are for them, where they might be going. But it's more important for that person to understand themselves. And as a mental health professional, gosh, I've been working now for well over 30 years in this field, Mark. I've never fully known anybody, and at times I don't fully know myself. But what we do know is that by providing really good information to people, supporting them to understand themselves, supporting them to understand their treatment options and what they can do to help themselves, we can really help people along. Now, sometimes working face-to-face is the best way to go, but sometimes working online can be really effective as well. And I think one of the important things about the field, or about maybe service delivery and change and development, is to understand that no one's trying to replace or compete with other services or models. This is really about providing consumers with options about healthcare delivery, and for us it's about using technology to improve access to care.
As it can be very rare to get the opportunity to discuss dispassionately with somebody in the healthcare industry as a healthcare professional, and somebody as qualified as Professor Titov, I wanted to ask Nick, what part of therapy is about teaching a person to know themselves. My GP, when I was first first diagnosed, actually turned to me and said, I'm a little bit envious of you, Mark. And I thought, what the hell do you have to be envious of? He said, you're going to have an opportunity now to learn who you really are. You're going to learn about yourself. Most people don't do that. And I wondered aloud to Nick that very, very proposition. Here's what he had to say.
Mark, I think you've nailed one of the key points. You know, we think a lot about this because what we've learned is that when people are struggling with mental health issues, what we often do is we try to manage those symptoms by changing the way we think, by changing our habits, our routines, our lifestyles. So if someone, for example, has symptoms, strong symptoms of anxiety, they'll often avoid situations or people or places. Now that changes how we live, or it changes how that person lives. It changes the rhythm of their life. And the education piece often is critical. And that self-understanding that, gosh, sometimes the things we're doing, which we think are helpful, actually in the long term may not be helpful. That takes a lot of time. And that education piece involves learning about our routines, but also, as you say, the language. How do we actually describe things? And often people say to us, look, I've never thought about it like this.
Yeah.
This is really helpful, just understanding what I'm doing and to be able to put words to it and understand that if I do this, then this might happen. And if I do this, then something else might happen, is incredibly powerful and can be life-changing for people.
I needed to know as well is how successful is Mindspot and does it work? How many people have you helped?
Well, Mark, we're probably all aware that many people struggle to access mental health care. And there are lots of reasons for that. But we've conducted over the years many clinical trials, and we've looked carefully at the results from our clinical services like Mindspot. And we've learned that delivering mental health care online can reduce barriers to care for many people. And then personally for our team and also for myself, it's a privilege to serve our community in this way.
Well, one of the things that initially struck me when I first had a mental illness, looking back at it, I kind of felt like I was a person that had walked into a new country and didn't know the language. Everything was kind of familiar and I kind of knew what was going on, but I couldn't understand fully because I didn't have the language. Professor, how hard is it for people when they're embarking on the mental health journey to transition into this new language of mental health?
What we find with a lot of people we serve is that, you know, initially they're just not sure. And as they progress through treatment, they learn more. And as they learn more, there's more insights. Now, you know, insights are important and they're really helpful, but often as they learn more, they can start to change their behaviors, their actions, as I say, their routines. And we think that that's critical for people.
Now, we've learned lots of really great things about Mindspot to this point. So I had to get to the nitty gritty. How do people access the service of Mindspot?
Mark, we offer a range of different types of services. People can just visit the website and download information or read information. They can call the clinic and just have a chat to one of our therapists. But if they'd like a clinical service, then we ask them to create an online account with us, which is a secure, easy to make account, and then complete a brief assessment. Now, we provide results automatically, and then people can choose whether or not they want to talk to one of our great therapists about symptoms and treatment options.
One of the things that I noticed looking at the website was that the Mindspot organization offers an emergency service. Now, this is not something that you would expect an online treatment program to have. And I asked Professor Nick about this.
Well, with respect to people in emergency, we encourage people to reach out to a crisis service so they can get their needs met immediately. Mm-hmm. But if we have a therapist available, we're happy to speak with people to help them access that support. And that's a key part of what we do. Sometimes, as you're probably well aware, people can get really stressed for lots of reasons, and sometimes just need some help navigating options. There are a number of things that people benefit from, and for some people, they just recognize that they're not in a safe space, and what they need to do is take some action immediately to make sure that they do stay safe until that situation has resolved or improved, or they've got some more support around them.
Throughout this entire interview, I was taken with how Nick is so personable. And it didn't strike me as any surprise when I tried to compliment him on the work. Not only does he downplay how much they've already done, but of course, and as I was to find, I so expected it from Nick's personality, he just downplayed it all. Yeah, he knows that they're doing a good thing, but he's got an amazing team around him. So when I tried to say, what a great job, mate, thank you for doing what you're doing, this is what he had to say.
Well, Mark, thank you. And can I say it's a work in progress? I look at what we do and I think, gosh, we're probably 65% of where we need to be.
Wow.
We're constantly improving, and the team are really committed. We've got about 30 or so different projects we're working on just to improve different aspects of the service. But, at the end of the day, it's about trying to deliver mental health care as easily and as accessibly as possible. And, we sometimes talk to people on their farms and they're standing on top of their tractor in the middle of a field on the hill because that's the only place they've got reception.
Right.
And so, there's not much that occurs online. It's just a telephone call on a weekly basis with someone.
Yeah.
And for other people, we actually send content or material to them via workbook because they're fly in, fly out, or they have no reception where they are. And when they come to town every month or so, then we talk to them. But in the meantime, we send them stuff to look at and read and think about and practice. So there's so many different ways that we're trying to help people, but also so many different needs out there in the community.
I just think what an incredibly healthy thing that is to do. You go into town once a month, you check in and get your mental health sorted as well. That's brilliant.
I think it's brilliant as well. Yeah.
Yeah. One thing that I always do in interviews is I always give my guests the final word. And I ask them to tell us what has been their biggest or best lesson that they've learned in their time living with, dealing with, being part of the mental health world. What is his best piece of advice?
Yeah, Mark, this is a great question.
and it's a small question too. I mean,
Well, what I've always found over the years is that we all, regardless of who people are, we all experience good times and bad times. We all experience symptoms of things like anxiety and depression. They're part of the normal human condition, that they're wired into our neurophysiology. But if they happen too often or they're too severe, those symptoms are terrible things. They make us feel bad about ourselves. They change the way we see our world, and they affect our confidence about our future. Now, the good news is most people can recover, and that's where I think services like Mindspot can help. And we know that recovering from anxiety or depression takes a lot of courage. As I mentioned before, it involves changing habits and routines, which we might have fallen into, but which in the long term may not be good for us. And some people just need some gentle reminders to practice skills that can really help. But sometimes it's about learning new skills and making bigger changes. And it groups, organisations like Mindspot, we're here to help. We're here to help by offering free, caring, professional services. And I encourage people, don't suffer in silence. Reach out to us or reach out to your GP or Beyond Blue or Lifeline or whoever you're comfortable reaching out to. But do reach out.
Lastly, in every interview, I always give my guest the final word. And true to form, Nick wanted to extend an invitation to people that are struggling out there to find and access mental health care.
Look, my final comments really, Mark, are about, firstly, thank you very much again for this opportunity. Look, we are honoured to support the Australian community. And if we can help, then please do reach out. In the meantime, I guess take care, be strong, and as I say, if we can help, come visit us.
I am so incredibly grateful to Professor Nick Titov, the Executive Director of Mindspot. Do reach out. I can't think of a more genuine leader of an organisation that I've met, although the more leaders I meet in roles of management in the mental health care world, I'm beginning to see that they are an incredible caliber of people, and I can see why they're being trusted to be the executive in an organisation such as this. So thank you once again to Professor Nick. I want to give the invitation. Please like, share and subscribe if you like Shattered the podcast, so that we can bring you more conversations like the one that we did today. Thanks for your time, and above all else, I look forward to speaking to you again soon. Bye for now. Thank you for listening to Shattered the podcast. I'd like to thank our producer, Meredith Brosnan, our executive producer, Torian Lau, and the band Adelaide for allowing us to use their song as our theme. Go to shatteredthepodcast.com for more information.